Hello. Passionate about sustainability, energy, and climate? You're in the right place. Welcome to Energetic. I'm Maureen Cornelis, and together we will engage with people who dedicate their lives to climate justice and making a just energy transition happen. They may be activists, scientists, policymakers, or other enthusiasts, just like you. Let their life stories and insights inspire you to build a better future for people and the planet. Today's episode is proudly sponsored by the Energy Prospects Project. This Horizon 2020 initiative is at the forefront of exploring how energy citizenship can drive the urban energy transition. In this new episode, we'll dive into the vital role of civic engagement in shaping a sustainable, democratic energy system across Europe. Stay tuned as we unravel how citizens are not just consumers, but pivotal actors in this transformative journey. Our guest today is Janis Brizga, a linchpin in the realms of sustainable development and consumption at Green Liberty and the University of Latvia. His journey weaves through the dual threads of environmental science and public administration, showcasing a commitment to bridging academic rigor with actionable governance. Janis's role, from leading WWF Latvia environmental policy to his academic pursuits, highlights a career dedicated to innovative solutions for a sustainable future. Janis has been influential within several projects and Bankwatch network, and he really champions interdisciplinary approaches to environmental challenges. I'm sure you will be as inspired as I am by his work, which propels the global conversation on sustainability and makes Janis a key figure in shaping a greener and more equitable world. Janis, welcome to Energetic.
Hello.
So let's start from the beginning. So your engagement with environmental advocacy and research started at a time when Latvia was kind of just opening to such concept. So what did motivate you to embark on this path, and how did those kind of early experience shape your current endeavors?
Yeah, end of 80s, when Soviet Union was kind of collapsing and going through the transitional period, environmental movement started to kind of develop and grow in many of the Eastern European countries, including Latvia. And that was maybe one of the ways how actually people could gather, talk, and debate some kind of political issues, but through this environmental lens. No, at that time, in Riga, for example, there were several big demonstrations on environmental concerns, gathering like tens of thousands of people against some kind of development projects at that time. So it was not possible to mobilize people on kind of political grounds, but environment was okay, and that was also the time that many people started to kind of joining the movement, because it was many people were joining in. So I was a teenager at the time, so I was also getting involved in this environmental debate. But if we look now and compare, I think. Environmental movement in 80s and 90s was much more kind of about values and more kind of ethical debates. Now it's more, utilitarian, looking at lifestyles. What can you do at household level to improve your environmental performance, decrease energy consumption? So it's much more practical now when it was compared to what it was in 90s.
That's really, really interesting, because the other day, for whatever reason, I was listening to Manu Chao. He's one of the, you remember at the end of the 90s, early 2000s, he was one of the voices behind this kind of movement about uniting people wherever they are, whatever the language they speak. And his songs are, or at the time at least, they were very much about respecting nature and etc. But it was never very practical. And what you say about about like this kind of, now we have a more utilitarian approach. And for instance, if we continue with music, with the bands like Coldplay, who tries to mobilize on climate through their concert, it's true that it's quite a shift, right? It's really interesting to see it like from your perspective, because I thought it was only me. Like, what did happen? There was something. There was a different conversation. So you noticed it, and I think what's really interesting is that you noticed it as an activist somehow, and also in academia, and also in administration, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I started working for environmental organizations in 90s, and there was a lot of discussions about sustainable development at the time. You know, after Rio conference in '92, which was just after the Latvia gained independence, and also on the political level, all kind of debates about how we should organize the governance processes for not only for environment, for everything. There was a lot of discussion about this balance between economic development, environmental protection, and social justice, equality. And these were in 90s, at least in Latvia, it was not very easy debate because, of course, the kind of dominant focus was for economic growth. It's still there. I think I think it's still there for catching up with rest of Western Europe in terms of material wealth. Now we can see that. Most of the environmental impacts are because of this rush for material welfare of the society, because we consume way too much energy and resources, and build our wealth on converting environmental resources into goods and products and services for short-term consumption. And this is still problematic issue, and kind of the debate never disappeared. No, it's still there.
Yeah, it has shifted in many different ways, because it's really, the situation is totally different now from then. But when we prepared this podcast, you also told me that Latvia still relies a lot on forest biomass for its energy well-being. So it presents quite a unique challenge. And I mean, biomass, of course, it's somehow renewables, but can you tell us more about the Latvian forest and why it does matter that it is actually preserved or conserved in a certain way?
Yeah, this is one of the biggest maybe nature conservation debates in Latvia about the forest sustainability. And generally, Latvia's energy sector is, you could say, rather green. No, we don't have any local fossil fuels, fossil resources, no coal or oil. So then we are depending on external resources. We are using natural gas. There is no coal for heat and power production. Daugava River, which is the kind of biggest river, has several hydroelectric dams which were built during the Soviet time. But otherwise, there is very little fossil fuels. So in terms of energy production, the CO2 emissions are comparatively small. And we have a very big share of renewable energies. It's, more than 40% of the electricity is produced from the renewables, including the biomass. The biomass makes a big part of that because, and also especially for heating in the rural areas and smaller towns, the heating is provided through the biomass power plants or CHP plants. And country is covered with forests. More than half of the country territory is forest. And it's one of the big export products for also energy-wise. We are also exporting wood pellets to other countries for energy production. So Latvia is, I think, top 5 biomass exporters for energy. And that's, of course, causes big debates about sustainability and how sustainably are we managing our forests. Previously, before the war in Ukraine, Latvia was importing also forest biomass from Russia and Belarus for local production and then export of the products. So now it's closed, and the forest industry is really lacking the resources to convert into product. So that's been a big pressure to increase the extraction of the Latvian forest. And we just few weeks ago, the environmental movement won the court case against the government in constitutional court against that, so that the government wanted to decrease the diameter of trees to be allowed for cutting. So that was a big win. But I guess the fight is not really ended with this. There will be other ways how to try to use this natural resource. And I think it's very similar, like in other countries where you have, Poland with big coal deposits, or similar in Germany. It's not very easy to kind of stop using these resources and say, no, we keep them for environmental or nature conservation or sustainability purposes or for recreational purposes, because that's a kind of many people see it as the money lying down on the ground. No? You can just get it and use it. The same for oil. No, that many countries which are rich in oil deposits, it will be very hard to convince them to leave these resources in the ground because of the climate change or other reasons. So I'm rather pessimistic how we're going to convince these countries or companies not to extract the resources they have.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. Because I've heard of situations, for instance, in Costa Rica, where there are some international groups that want to pay the countries and the landowners to not cut the lands, not cut the trees, and be sure that to preserve the land, because it has a value the way it is, because the trees are carbon sinks, and they are part of a broader really ecosystem and a broader conservation strategy. And I mean, that's a very nice transition to the concept of energy communities that you've been working on, including with the Energy Prospect project. You also told me that energy cooperatives, or maybe cooperatives in general, they are relatively uncommon in the Baltic states, in particular in Latvia. So from your experience, first, what are the main hurdles? And second, would they be a way for people to better acknowledge that they have resources somehow that they need to preserve for them, for their kids, and for their grandkids as well?
Yeah, I think that's one of the problems for most of the post-Soviet countries when cooperatives where we had a collective farms for agriculture, which was not very efficient way of production, and most of the people were not very maybe happy by being engaged in that. So we have this negative connotations with the whole concept of cooperative business or cooperative management of resources. And also currently, there is very few cooperatives or cooperative activities in Latvia and in other Baltic states. And I believe this is one of the reasons, because of this kind of historical inheritance. There are some cooperatives for farmers when they are kind of sharing the tractors and some equipment. Some other cooperatives maybe, but it's not a common movement, not a movement with history like in many other countries where the cooperative movement started in beginning already of the 20th century or even the end of 19th century. And it's become the part of it's a business as usual for many cases, and then it's also easy to go maybe from agricultural cooperative to energy cooperative, because it's even more complicated. Energy system as well has been something which been very centralized most of the time. So both the energy production, energy distribution has been in hands of the state. With the big energy production companies or state grid, which people were just final consumers. You pay the bill and you get the energy. There was no need for public engagement in debates or in some kind of practical activities around energy. You could complain when it's too expensive, maybe, or it's you have the blackouts, or product is not provided. But otherwise, there was no need for engagement. Now, I think the situation has significantly changed. Both technologically, now we have technologies like, for example, solar panels, which everyone can put on the rooftops. There's been a very big development during the last few years in Latvia after the Russian war in Ukraine. All the governmental debate shifted to move away from the gas, which we mostly supplied from Russia, and oil, which was also mostly from Russia, to find other ways of producing energy. One way would be to substitute with gas from somewhere else, like LPG from US or some other countries, but also increase the local production. So there was subsidy system introduced to install solar panels and heat pumps and some other technologies. So a lot of people during the last 2 years have used this opportunity, and now we have, I think, tripled the solar power production compared to a few years ago. So it's been a very big shift in public engagement. So there are a lot of prosumers, people who produce energy at home. Energy market has been also liberalized, so you can also, if you are not producing energy, you can also choose from different providers, both the heat and gas and power consumption. So you have to follow different prices, and that's you have to think much more about your energy habits, your practices. Energy costs has also significantly increased during these few years. So people have to be engaged in energy debates and practices. And that's a good ground for energy citizenship, because you are pushed into the energy citizen in a way by these economic structural changes which we see during these last years. And my concern is that maybe not all the people are ready for that. There are a lot of people who are passive. In Energy Prospects, we also run a representative public survey, which showed that most of the people don't really want to be so much engaged in these discussions. They just they want to have green, cheap, reliable energy, and they don't want to think about these things. But and my concern is that these people will be losing out, because they will be paying more than necessary for these energy services. They will not choose the right energy products. They will not engage in energy production. So that could increase the energy poverty, which is already comparatively high in a country where some people cannot afford the high energy cost.
That's really interesting, because what you're saying is that essentially more and more people are interested in green energy and understanding that it matters, and they also want cheap energy, which is of course also one of the promises of renewables, that it could provide really cheap energy. However, they may not really have the tools or the means to understand how to make that really happen to them, and somehow there is like a discrepancy between the intention and what the utilities, traditional utilities and governments are actually delivering, which is not a service that is 100% green and 100% cheap for everyone. And that's where there is an opportunity for energy communities to actually fill this gap, right?
Yeah, energy communities is something which is in infancy still. It's something which is we see the potential that for these energy communities to develop. There is legal work done by the government to actually describe the possibilities, how these energy communities can develop, can function. But there are still only few examples we could look at for the energy communities. There are several municipalities we've been talking to, which say that they're really looking forward ways how to get support for the people, for local communities to use this possibility. One example would be in many bigger towns in Latvia, people live in a bigger multi-apartment buildings. Built maybe in the 70s during the Soviet era. They had a big potential, for example, for solar production on their rooftops. But what we are missing good technical tools for sharing both the energy and also then the costs and income from this production. And an additional barrier which we see is very low trust of public. There is generally very little trust in institutions, in government, in politicians. People don't trust also that today decisions by the government, if the government says, okay, we want to support energy communities, that it will be lasting, that after 5 or 3 years we'll be on the same track, because people maybe see too much variations in where we are moving if we look back 10 to maybe 15 years. And that's a limiting factor for people to get engaged and to participate in these kind of movements. One more thing with the multi-apartment buildings is that, which is a good thing and a bad thing at the same time, is that in these buildings, we don't have a high public segregation. So there could be affluent people, like rich people living there. There could be pensioners with a few hundred euro pensions living in the same building, and it's very hard for these people to agree on something together. And it's not just for energy communities; it's also for housing insulation projects. That these people are so different. They have different means and different knowledge levels, and also maybe the trust between them is not very high, because they see each other from kind of different social groups and don't want to engage. So yeah, I listed several problems and challenges, but I still think that energy communities is a good way forward, also for decreasing the energy poverty for many of the communities. And we have to work with these kind of tools to make it easier, to make it more practical, and also to develop few good examples. People really trust in examples, in good examples. If they see that the neighboring house or neighboring community has done something and it's working, and they can go and talk to each other in the park and then see that it's really working and people are happy about the result, then it's a much more bigger chance for the ideas to spread.
That's really interesting, because you mentioned trust really several times, like low trust in administration, in government, low trust in utilities, low trust in your own neighbor, because they may have a totally different social background. I mean, the fact that there are a lot of social differences within the same building can be quite inspiring also, but it's somehow a forced situation. And there are some examples that I have myself worked on about really improving the quality of the building, and because it's one of the key ways to address energy poverty. And some people who were not able to pay were actually leaving the buildings because they just couldn't afford it, and they were going against the tide, and they were not benefit this way. They were not, their choice or their inability to make a choice or make an investment was actually impairing their ability to live a more sustainable, resilient lifestyle as well. And somehow the fact that you see hope also in examples coming from other communities, it's also what Adina said, like in the previous episode, it's also that sometimes you just need to start the conversation in a certain way. And maybe you start by the conversation by noticing something that is happening in another community, right? And in her case, she mentioned a lot of environmental friendly projects that had nothing to do with energy, but at the end of the day, they were all related to energy, right? It's like the important what matters is to have really a starting point. So what kind of strategies, because within the Energy Prospect project, you have talked to many stakeholders, you have assessed a lot of situations. So what kind of strategy or models would you like to bring home to Latvia? And would you think that would make a huge difference in fostering environmental sustainability and cooperation between the different people with their different backgrounds with the different stakeholders we at stake? Because it's not only about households, right? It's about creating the right ecosystem.
Yeah, through the energy prospect, we have collected more than 500 cases of energy citizenship across Europe. And there are plenty of good examples, which we would be happy to bring home. Many of the energy citizenship examples also focuses on not only on energy, but also on social aspects, getting maybe more disadvantaged social groups involved in energy production, and some of the initiatives around transportation, I think, would be very important also for Latvia, because in our survey of the energy citizenship cases, we couldn't really identify much of the energy citizenship in a field of transport, but transport is one of the big energy consumers. And if in the heat and power sectors, we can easily find ways to maybe to replace by renewables or improve the efficiency, then transportation sector, the best thing it would be to move to public transport, no? But that's more or less possibility for urban people. But in rural areas, we have a very low population density, and there is very poor public transportation service network provided. So rural people without car are really disabled for getting access to the public services, like, I don't know, getting to the hospital or to the shop without the car is impossible, and that wouldn't also mean these people, they wouldn't have money to buy electric cars, or which are much more expensive, even if the government is currently providing the subsidy scheme. But many of these existing government initiatives, like I mentioned, for solar panels, for heat pumps, for electric cars, they are meant for people with income, with rather high incomes, who can afford upfront investment costs. They have a knowledge on how to apply for projects and so on. And then they can get the money back. Part of the money gets from the government. But this is not really designed for people with lower income. There is a big, I think there is a big gap there for Latvia. That there are energy poverty is still a big problem, and we don't really provide good solutions, good instruments, and different energy citizenship initiatives, low tech solutions. Things like building your own solar collectors or things like that. Could be a good way, low cost, low tech ways of helping people to get energy services they need in a kind of environmentally sustainable way. So I think there is a lot of work to do. There are many NGOs who are actually doing these things, but this usually is kind of case by case. It's not really societal movement. It's just individual cases.
So that's where this kind of community has to go beyond really a structured community of people such as a cooperative, but really go with the community of people who want to shape the future together. And I think somehow it's the conversation that happens actually everywhere. Anywhere I bring my podcast, is like I receive feedbacks like that, like we need to bring people on board, and sometimes it works really well because we have a common ground, and some other times it's because we have a common enemy. Well, it's not that shiny, but that is the case. But really, it's about really finding things that talk to really manage to reach people in a way that they feel that they have to do something. And so, what do you think Latvia would need really to accelerate its transition towards cleaner, more sustainable consumption way and cleaner energy? What would it need, really?
Yeah, I think that's a big big question, but I believe that there is a need for stronger public engagement in looking for these solutions and visions. Moving away from seeing public as a kind of passive consumer, but looking into this really this citizenship. That takes time. It's not maybe short term kind of approach or short term decisions. Not that next year or everybody will be engaged, but we have to demonstrate these good examples. We have to provide simple, understandable solutions, both technological, but also in terms of kind of organizational solutions, and that could be helpful way forward. As I mentioned, there are many NGOs who are working, and I think civil society is a good way forward because, like mentioned, there is low trust in government, and civil society is much more trusted. Engaging research in finding these good solutions, I think, is also kind of crucial. There are different research programs, but sometimes we maybe focus too much on this fundamental research and not really try to look for this practical solutions for specific communities. There is also a lot of myths around energy production and consumption. There is many people who believe in all kind of conspiracy theories around that, and especially for wind energy, for example, and for something else that shows this maybe public awareness level on some of these issues.
That's really super interesting. And I didn't know that there were any kind of conspiracy, right? It's so hard for me to fathom that I can't pronounce the word. I didn't know that there were any conspiracy against wind energy, because it seems like, from what I know about Baltic countries, you have also some neighbors who are quite pioneering in using more wind in their grids. And that seems to be quite straightforward somehow. And also because you are very north, so I would imagine that solar energy sometimes is not working as well as it does in more southern countries. So, it seems really from an outsider perspective, wind looks way more suitable somehow. Really, I don't know anything about Latvia, and I would imagine that it fits better to the actual climates. But now you say it's like, oh wow. So if people are on themselves believing that, well, it creates, there is this enormous awareness gap that needs to be addressed, right?
Yeah. In summer we have the white night, so there's sun almost 20 hours a day, but it's just maybe a few weeks, like you said, like winter months are very dark, and there is very little solar production. But there is a huge wind energy potential. Baltic states are bound by the sea, so there is also offshore wind energy potential in the Baltic Sea. But there is a very big, not in my backyard, resistance movement for wind park developments in Latvia, and that's why the wind energy is very poorly developed. There are a few projects also going in offshore, and also there local coastal communities are campaigning against the wind turbines, which would be maybe 10, 15 kilometers in the sea, but people say that that would destroy their special view and all kind of things, which I think are mostly grounded in that we don't know, or there are some other interests from maybe competing energy producers to not to develop the wind energy. There is one more project now in Latvia where Latvian State Energy Company and Latvian State Forests are developing a joint project to build the wind farms in the forest because there is no people, so there is no one to complain. Of course, that's maybe not the best way from environmental perspective because you have to cut the forests to put up the wind turbines there. But it seems to be the best forward going project currently because there is little people to complain about this project because they are further away from anyone. So that's unfortunately the reality for some of the technological solutions. But we don't always have to rely on technology. We have to think more about the sufficiency of energy consumption and maybe also look into these latent forms of energy citizenship for not those who are shifting from gas to solar or something else. But those who are looking for ways not to consume energy so much as they did, for like energy diets of the future. And we are over consuming energy in many ways. And in the future, we have to think much more how to conserve energy, how to not over consume it and conserve it. And that's also not very easy way forward because many of these visions about the future energy and sustainable energy says that we have a lot renewable, cheap, green, affordable. No, but I think we will be getting into other problems with access of resources. For example, biomass, which we already discussed in Latvia or in other countries, but also solar energy or electric cars need a lot of mineral resources to provide. I don't think that we can get an electric car for every inhabitant on the planet. No, we will not be able to provide so much resources. And even if we have it, that there will be huge traffic jams all over the place. So we have to look for other ways how to actually get what we want, to get these energy services which are needed and what we expect from life, from what is a good life in general. That is a much bigger picture, bigger question, maybe going out of the energy debate, but generally the debate about the good life and sustainable consumption corridors is also something which we are looking into. Yeah, how much is enough, and so that it's enough for you to satisfy your kind of basic needs, but you are also not killing the planet by it.
Yeah, and that's definitely the principles behind sufficiency rather than really efficiency, making sure that it works better, but actually it also delivers better within the best limits of our planet, and really to make sure that the energy climate transition that we need don't deplete other resources, especially in other places or countries. And it's been a super fascinating conversation, Janis, but we are arriving at the very end. So, but I would like to leave really the floor to you because you have such an interesting double hat as an activist with Green Liberty and as a researcher with the University of Latvia. So, is there one thing that really makes you hopeful about Latvia, or some really good example that you would like to share? Yeah, let's say if somebody wants to get inspired by Latvia, what would you like them to keep in mind?
Oh, I think there are many good examples which we could look at. There are permaculture, for example, movement, which is I think getting popularity, where people are looking into this. Simple solutions, something which you can do it by yourself for providing both housing, food, and energy, which really follow the sufficiency principles we just discussed. That you're not really over-consuming resources. You're looking for local resources which are available in the community to build your. To build your well-being. So there are many of these, you can say, crazy people who are trying to find other ways on how to live their lives, and that's I think that's inspiring, and that's that may be not a mainstream now. I think it's very important that we have communities and organizations who are kind of doing these social experiments and testing out these solutions, and I hope also inspire other people and could kind of encourage this ripple effect on getting more people engaged. So scaling up many of these energy citizenship initiatives, learning also from other countries how they've been doing, and I'm looking forward to this process to take ground.
That's really amazing. I mean, with Edina in the previous episode, we concluded that she was actually a rebel. She had rebel ideas, but you do also have rebel ideas. And I didn't know that Energy Prospects was actually a project with rebels, about rebel ideas. That's truly inspiring. And really today I learned a lot. So thank you so much for this super insightful discussion. And I would like also to thank the Energy Prospect project managers and team for making this episode possible. They have been our sponsor for these two episodes, 50 and 51. And now we're going to have also the following episode, the last part of the series. So we will further explore the impact of energy citizenship in the European energy transition. So please stay tuned for and join us next time to continue uncovering the significant strides being made towards achieving the EU's climate ambition, maybe with the rebel lens. Who knows? Thank you so much, Janis.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Energetic. It's been a pleasure diving deep into the world of sustainability and the just energy transition with some of the most forward-thinking mouths out there. I'm Maureen Cornelis, your host from policy consultancy Next Energy Consumer, and it's been an incredible journey growing this podcast together with you, our knowledgeable and passionate listeners. Since 2021, we've shared countless stories, insights, and ideas over more than 40 episodes, and it's all thanks to your support and enthusiasm. If you enjoyed our journey so far and want to help us keep the conversation going, why not support us on Patreon? Every bit helps us bring more inspiring content your way. Check out the show notes for the link. And hey, if you're a part of an organization that shares our passion for a sustainable and inclusive energy future, we're excited to explore sponsorship opportunities with you. It's a fantastic way to connect with a dedicated audience and make an even bigger impact together. Shout out to the fantastic Igor Mihailovich from Podcast Media Factory for his incredible sound design work, making every episode a joy to listen to. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to Energetic on your favorite podcast platform. And if you think a friend or a colleague could benefit from our episode, we'd love for you to spread the word. It helps us grow and keep the energy transition conversation alive. Sharing is caring. Follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn to stay engaged and update on all things energetic. Thanks once again for lending your ears. Until next time.